Hi, it's Art, short for Artemy, and you can find me at CU Artist pretty much everywhere. Today I wanted to talk about comic fonts. I was recently watching a Turtle and Bug video about things that can make people turn away from your comic, and one of the really important ones is people being able to read the text. So while formatting the speech bubbles can be really important, also picking the font is probably more so. I will link that video in the description. It has some useful tips, I would say. It does also touch on some of the stuff that I know, so it might be double covered, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail specifically on making your own font. However, I would say that you should really only make your own font if you are absolutely certain that it is going to be legible, very easy to read, because if people have a hard time reading it, they're not gonna be able to keep staying to read your work. So first I'm going to talk about some of the options for finding fonts online that I have used before I made my own font, and also sometimes I want a specialty font. So my absolute favorite place to go to is Blambot. They specialize in comic fonts specifically. The creators have been letterers in the comic industry for a really long time, so their website also has a lot of really helpful information on how to format things, what is proper comic writing etiquette. And because they've been in the industry so long, they also have a lot of the fonts for free if you're an indie comic artist. So pretty much if you are not a corporation, you can get a lot of their fonts for free. And because they've been in the industry so long, they are really high quality fonts. So I definitely have purchased some from them because not all of them are free, and I was going to be using them for my fonts originally, but the font that I chose didn't have a bold option, I don't believe. So I was having to mix fonts to have a more yelly effect, which was kind of a pain in the rear. So I went to find a different font that was a little bit more my vibe for, I think, the coming out comic I was working on. And I was going to use that, but it was so similar to my own handwriting, which is why I liked it. But that made me go, I just want to try once more. I just want to try once more with Calligrapher, which is the font making app. Well, website. I've tried it a lot of other times. Definitely throughout the years I have used it, but I will talk more about it after I talk about other font websites really fast. Some of the other websites I've used are 1001 Fonts, Font Squirrel, I believe. I've used Google Fonts, and fontspace.com. The most important thing about using these is making sure you check if it can be used commercially, I would say. Just make sure if this person is asking for money for the font that you are doing that. The font that I almost used for Farragon was called Billy, and it was through a more indie font creator. I will link that font in the description. So that was, I believe, more of a pay-what-you-can sort of thing. So there's a lot of different places you can get fonts. Just make sure that you are paying the creator if that is needed. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about Calligrapher. Some things to note before getting too deep into making your own font are, if you're using Clip Studio Paint for your lettering, it will automatically italicize your font for you. I created a separate font in bold. Since I made the font in Clip Studio, I did it as a vector layer, so I was just able to easily thicken all of the lines for the boldened version of my font. But I did not have to tilt everything for the italics. It automatically does that. However, one thing I really, really wish that I knew beforehand is that in Calligrapher you can create variations of a character, and that can add a little bit of a funky texture, make it so that you have different versions of an A, make it so that it's just a little bit crunchy. As of now, Clip Studio does not support that, so I went through and I was having all of these variations on my letter, and picking which ones I wanted to be the primary one, and then found out that it didn't matter in Clip Studio. So if you're using Photoshop, I think it will let you do that, and pretty much other programs it lets me use it in Pages just fine. But pre-warning, don't spend time on that if you don't want to. So I used the free version of Calligrapher, which means you can only do one font at a time, and you also have a limited number of characters. I am personally kind of considering making another version of the font that has just some random characters that I wasn't able to fit in to the main font, but it's not super top on my priority list at the moment. But pretty much you can go and pick which characters you want on this website, and then you will download a file. I originally, when I was trying to do this, was doing it printed out and then scanning it in. More recently, I realized I could just do it all digitally, so that's what I ended up doing so I could fix things easier. But you go in and you can set it so that you have a guideline or not, and you write out your font. So as I mentioned, I had tried this before a lot of times and never really liked the results. It just wasn't something that I could see working for a full-length comic. But I wanted to give it one more go since I was getting closer to starting to post, and I know that my handwriting is legible and clear, and I just wanted it to match the comic a little bit better and also be able to be bold, be italic, and just still fit the vibe of the comic. So after I wrote the alphabet and re-uploaded it into Calligrapher, that is where I made the difference. I really put a lot of effort into the editing portion of this. I made sure all of the letters were at the same baseline. I fixed if one of the letters looked a little bit bigger than the others. I also ended up, they have like an erase tool that you can use, so I was cleaning up a little bit of the edges of the letters if they looked a little bit funky. And doing those edits really made it a font I actually enjoy using. One thing I would note is with the erasing and fixing parts of the letter, I was like fixing little tiny pixels. And sometimes I would go a little bit too far because when it is that small, the pixels are really what is giving it that kind of granular, crunchy, more authentic look that I was going for. So definitely try to not go overboard on the fixing and editing stuff if that is not what you want. But yeah, the tutorials I've seen talk about this before. I don't know that they went that into depth on the editing, or maybe I just was like, I'm good enough. But yeah, I definitely want to just mention that the editing after you've created all the letters is really what pushed it into a usable font for me. Yeah, so that is all I have for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you tomorrow.